let me be honest with you. Um, if you look the part of the continuation of colonization, which I think a lot of you guys knows, African Union haven't done any single thing about that. Other things is that the promotion of non-African languages inside African Union. Uh, it's even like it's getting very worse actually. Me as a Swahili advocate globally, it's getting very worse. How do you see an institution that what will you think if European Union in order to apply for a job inside the European Union, you were asked to have to speak Luganda or Runyankole or something. How will you think about that? Do you think European will accept that? So why are we required to speak English or French or Portuguese or some other crazy colonial languages inside the African Union as a requirement? Because the institution is not there for African people. It has done nothing for Africa and will do nothing for Africa. Even the discussion they are having today is about what the medical things, the pharmacy, and the climate change, and all of that things. We our people are worried about next meal. We now worried about the climate change. Those are the idea of Europeans who are taking our natural resources and then they come back and they tell us about climate change and so on. So it's my opinion, though. I'm not saying you guys have to believe me, but I believe that if we ever want to do something, African Union have to be closed. Absolutely. I don't see any reason why president of poor country like Malawi will come to African Union summit and spend at least 20,000 US dollar while his people are suffering hungry and come to African Union summit and do nothing and nothing happen 1 year, 2 years, and so on. So I think it's even ridiculous to have African Union like operating all these years. I think first of all, I do love brother Sifiwe. He's my good friend, and also he's of course Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Republic of New Africa. So he's my friend. I know that, and I agree with him absolutely that. The matter of fact is that we do surely we all agree that African Union should be closed because the idea of reshaping it or trying to edit it, he has failed. Now, what he says that we should just focus on what we can accomplish because it's too powerful, which I agree that I also he mentioned that as well, that we should just ignore that and leave that alone and then do what we can do, which is true, by the way. But one thing you guys need to understand is that it does not even take that much effort to close that institution. Just trust me on this. It's not something very difficult. Why? Because everyone knows that this institution is not working. Can you recall what His Excellency the President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni Kaguta, said last time? I think he mentioned this. He's been mentioning this that you come to African Union Summit and then you sit there and then you go, there is nothing happening. So if the leaders already discovered that this thing is not working, I think that we should just get up and say this is not working. Just to let people know, because if your president, for instance, the president of Gambia, if he come to African Union Summit and then he does nothing, or African Union, he send whoever it is delegation, then nothing happened. And when he come back to Gambia, people welcome him at airport and say, hey, why did you spend our money to go to African Union Summit while nothing is happening from there? Once the people get up and hear that this institution needs to be closed, that can be very easy to get rid of it. But the other way to ignore it, I think that's very simple, and I think we all should do that anyways. We should just ignore it and do what we need to do. As Sifiwe also suggested that we should join the Sahel movement. That also is another thing good. But to close it by fighting maybe or by doing another thing, it's not gonna be easy because there is so many people are making check of this institution. But I don't think we just need to keep hoping that there will be some fruits come from inside African Union.
I think what we really need to be considering is one thing if they're not doing things to help Africa. The question would be, and I think these gentlemen would be better to answer this, the real issue if we're talking African Union, because quite frankly, they're not doing anything African unification wise. The question would be, are they actively doing things that are damaging to the continent? And are they a major problem, or are they just something that's just a lot of air that's a waste of our time to talk about? That would be a question I would ask them.
The first question that I understood was, is the African Union actively doing things to harm us, African people?
Yes. So in 2019, I believe, I was still in Washington, D.C., Dr. Arikana Chiomboliko, which some of you may know, she was sent to U.S. to be ambassador of African Union. That time, I actually attended some of her conferences, and after that, once she started to speak or to talk about path of continuation of colonization, which is still apply around the 16 countries in West Africa. The France wrote a letter sent to African Union, and that was the end of her position. So when you talk about is African Union actually still sabotaging and destroying and not protecting us, yes, it is doing that. That's why she was kicked out from African Union ambassador. I think that's as a fact. That's number one. Even if you talk on low level, if a leader of a country spend money, you know, our African countries are very poor, as you know. They don't have enough money. If one president spend 20,000 US dollar to go to the meetings, that is useless. That is sabotaging our people's life. So I think that there is so many things we can come up with, but obviously, if you're not active protecting Africa, let's give you an example. Congo DRC. You see how is in mess. All natural resources being rooted, and African Union is doing nothing. So that means it's giving them green lights to do so. It's so many examples we can talk about, but even let's talk about like democracy. So many countries we have ancient, maybe I can say ancient leaders who are in Africa sitting as the president. And the Constitution of African Union said that they need to promote democracy. How can we promote democracy and you say nothing to these people who have been on power forever, and they change the Constitution anytime, and then this which leads to the coups? So it's pretty much African Union is sabotaging and stopping anything you're trying to do. Actually, is already there trying to stop anyone who trying to do that. I want to make sure that you guys understand the fact that African Union, if you want to ask what African Union have done for Sudan, maybe you ask what African Union have done in general, not only Sudan, but also in general. What has African Union done? Because, you know, the Sudan, you know, it's ought to be union. And Sudan and South Sudan, they were separated under the watch of African Union. It's out to unite people, but it's dividing them. Somalia is in mess since 1990 today. African Union didn't do anything. Libya was destroyed completely, which I hope you guys, you know this. I don't want to preach this to you. And African Union didn't do anything about it. Rwanda genocide. African Union didn't do anything about it. The Congo is under. There is more than 120 labor groups in the Congo. And African Union can't do anything about it. The chairman of African Union, Moussa Faki, is from Chad. And the president of Chad was assassinated or killed in war. I think it was 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And African Union, where the chairman is come from, they couldn't do anything about it. So we should not expect any good things. As I said in Swahili, you cannot harvest cassava from the thorns, the garden of thorns. You cannot. So what I can say, those who are worried about Sudan, maybe you should worry about other countries as well, because the peace, like Sahel countries, they don't even know peace. Even Nigeria itself, the giant of Africa, they don't know peace. So why do you think it's only the case of Sudan more than the case of Somalia, the case of Mozambique, the case of Central African Republic, the case of South Sudan, the case of, you can't even mention. That's why I said in the beginning that the Agenda 2063 supposed that by 2020, we're supposed to silence all the guns in Africa. But not only we did not silence them, but we increased them in the present, but we never have them. So my point is that African Union is not going to do something for Africans. And you cannot even change it. You cannot make it work. It's impossible to do that. The only thing is to close it. And how we're going to close it, we just have to voice our voice.